This is a video essay about the 1973 Alejandro Jodorowsky film, The Holy Mountain, which I first saw in, well, now there's a question. So I guess 1997 is as good a place to start as any, because that was when I saw the Abel Ferrara film The Funeral at the Prince Charles Cinema with a big group of friends. At that time, the Prince Charles was mainly known as a place where you could see films that weren't exactly old, but had finished their main run at the cinema. So by this point, The Funeral had already been out for about 6 months or so. It was the first Ferrara film that most of my friends had ever seen, and it went down really well. So well, in fact, that a few weeks later, me and one of those friends, Seb, decided to rent another film that Ferrara had kind of made back-to-back with The Funeral, and that film was The Addiction. Now, The Addiction is a whole thing for me, and one day I'll probably do a video all about just that film, but it's hard for me to simply gloss over this film and move on to the next bit. At the time I saw The Addiction, I'd read an interview with Ferrara in which he talked about how the writer for The Funeral and The Addiction, and in fact the writer for almost every Ferrara film up to this point, Nicholas St. John, had lost his first child shortly before writing these two films. That gave both The Funeral and The Addiction a solidity or philosophy or whatever you want to call it that set them apart from other things for me. They were no longer simple exercises in genre filmmaking or entertainment or storytelling. This turned them into something else. They were laments on loss, vestiges of pain, and studies of why terrible things happen. There's a Buddhist koan, or moral story, where a man asks a monk to write a celebration of life, something positive, and the monk writes, grandfather dies, father dies, son dies. And the man is aghast. What is this thing you've written about death? This isn't what I wanted at all. And the monk says that this is the best possible outcome we can expect. No one outlives the generation below them. What Nicholas St. John went through before writing this film is just awful. Now, if you want to watch The Addiction and see it as a metaphor for substance abuse, that's cool, you can, it's all in there. But I really do believe that there's a lot more to The Addiction than you might notice at first glance. Set against a background hum of incidents like My Lai and other awful moments in history, The Addiction is also a film about a human being's ability to do bad things, or to allow bad things to happen to them. It's complicated and dense and layered. Its thesis statement is we are not evil because of the evil we do, but that we do evil because we are evil, which is kind of intense. It's not every day you sit down to watch a vampire film and instead receive a lecture on morality. And in the middle of this film appears something that really became a bit of a mantra for me, something that I've repeated to myself over and over and which has really encouraged me to maximize my life by minimizing it.
They fall like flies before the hunger, don't they? You can never get enough, can you? But you learn to control it. You learn, like the Tibetans, to survive on a little.
So I am someone for whom perfect is simply never good enough. Nothing is ever good enough for me. Enough is never enough for me. And this, you can never get enough, can you? But you learn, like the Tibetans, to survive on a little was epochal. It really shook me. It was like the older version of me talking to the me of 1997. And now it feels like the me of today is using it to talk to the me I used to be. All that ambition, all that hunger, all those bad habits, all those good habits, all that need, you can never get enough, can you? And it will eat you up unless you learn to survive on a little. Years later, in 2019, I ended up living and working in Nepal for a while, and those words were still with me. And it's a boring cliche to spend time in another country and get deeply affected by it, but I did. Because you live in a place and you think, oh, this is how life is, and I lived in New York for a while and life was pretty much the same there as it was in London, and so I continued thinking, oh, this is how life is, in the same way I did in London. But then you live somewhere else, like Nepal, and you realize, oh, I was just seeing life from one perspective, and you feel small. Everything in Nepal was kind of a challenge. Nothing was easy. Walking from one place to another was difficult. Crossing the road was difficult. Things were new and strange. And if you're wondering why this footage is so low res, this is because I am not a smartphone user. Never have been, never will be, if I can help it. These images were shot on a Nokia 8110 because you learn to survive on a little. I was lucky enough to do a flyby of Mount Everest while I was there. Look, this is me putting a Nokia 8110 up to a pair of binoculars so you can see the highest point on the planet, right there, so close you could almost reach out and touch it. But I'm getting ahead of myself. 1997, watching The Addiction on VHS, and before the film even started, there was a trailer, and it was a trailer for The Holy Mountain. And in the middle of this trailer, my friend turned to me and said, "What the f*** did I just see?" And so we decided that we simply had to see this film. It had recently had its first ever VHS release, but that didn't mean it was easily accessible. In the 90s in London, most video shops were either very small places that were basically an off-license, a store that sold alcohol and cigarettes but had a small corner reserved for VHS tapes, or they were the chains, old, bright-coloured places like Prime Time that really only catered to the big movies of the day. So finding a place that rented the VHS of the Holy Mountain wasn't going to be easy. There were two places that would have it: Video City in Notting Hill Gate and Channel 142 in Ladbroke Grove. We went to 142 and that was how I first saw the Holy Mountain. Except as the film played out, I kept thinking, wait, I've seen this before. I've seen these images before. What the hell is going on here? What the hell indeed? So years before that, in 1991, my brother had fallen in love with watching clips from the Rocky Horror Picture Show, and we did not have the movie on VHS, but we did have a bunch of random videotapes with sections of the film recorded from TV programs about the film, and one of those videotapes was a TV show called Video View. My brother wore those tapes out, playing them over and over and over again, and one time I put one of these tapes on and then left the tape running. It's hard to explain how many crazy things I saw back in the day simply by putting the wrong tape into the machine, or, as in this case, leaving a tape running and then seeing what else was on the tape. Because what else was on this particular tape was a 1 week only Alejandro Jodorowsky, a TV special by Jonathan Ross on Jodorowsky, who at that point had no films available in the UK at all. And that was where I first saw sections of the Holy Mountain. And holy hell, what on earth is this film? So when did I first see the Holy Mountain? In the early 90s? In the late 90s? You be the judge. But all of this is moot, because what I actually came here to talk about was a time I saw the Holy Mountain in April 2024. In late 2023, we started the process of losing my grandfather, and this went on for what felt like a really long time. And that might give you a picture of someone who lives far away, who I see only once a year, but that was not the case. He was a constant, close figure in my life, and the man who taught me how to be a man. Losing someone, especially in this administrative and organized way involving hospitals and hospices and so on, is really weird. Every day was the same. You'd wake up, travel, arrive at wherever he was, spend the day with him, and then head home late at night. Eat, sleep, repeat. And this went on for months and months and months, and you enter a strange world. One of the most bizarre elements of all this for me is that you, or at least I, remain distant from the bodies of the people around you. You don't know the weight and feel of other bodies like family members or friends. But as this process went on, I really learned the weight of his body. As I moved him, lifted him, helped dress and clean him. As the situation became more critical, you become more involved, and the weight, texture and temperature of a body suddenly become familiar to you after being unknown for so long. You sit and watch a chest rise and fall, and you listen to a breath with the understanding that this may be the last time you hear this breath, and then you watch a chest rise and fall again and wonder whether this will be the last breath you hear, or this one, or this one, or this one. You wake up, travel, sit by a bed, watch, listen, think. And this becomes your life. You can't remember a point when you were doing anything else, and there is nothing else you'd rather be doing. How much time is enough time to spend with someone you care about? One of the thoughts that kept coming back to me was that koan. Grandfather dies, father dies, son dies. And that despite how I felt, this was really the best sequence of events we can hope for, even though it might seem painful. And then one day, in April 2024, I got home. I was tired, and instead of going straight to bed, I thought, I want to remember that there's something else to life, something beyond the physical world. And that was when I decided to rewatch The Holy Mountain. Now, for those who don't know, Alejandro Jodorowsky is a Chilean filmmaker who made his early films in Mexico. The Holy Mountain is the third feature from Alejandro Jodorowsky. First was Fando and then El Topo. And El Topo received a lot of attention. It became a midnight movie classic. The Beatles loved it, and they introduced Jodorowsky to their manager. And this ended up with Jodorowsky having more money than ever before to shoot The Holy Mountain. $750,000, almost double the budget for El Topo. It's a film about a man that you can call the thief or the fool, who is living a life of decadence. He does whatever he wants with his friend, who might not be real at all, just a manifestation of his drive, and the two of them live in the land of do as you please. And then the thief meets a guru, played by Jodorowsky, Jodorowsky, who shows him that there is more to life. The guru then assembles a team of people, each represented by a planet, and they all aim to reach the top of the holy mountain where they will discover the secret of immortality. So in the third act, we have this long training combined with journey sequence, but actually, spoilers, this is all just a film and no resolution is ever found, because what really matters is the life you lead after the film has finished. And that's the Holy Mountain. It's a far more straightforward experience than you may have been led to believe. Rewatching it in April 2024, one of the first things that hit me was, oh, this film is in English, because I always forget that, and it's always kind of a surprise every time I rewatch the film.
My name is Loot. My planet is Pluto. My business is architecture.
The film is also what you might call an exercise in tableau filmmaking, or filming everyone in the same shot at the same time filmmaking. Jodorowsky had a lot of background in theatre, and this might be why he isn't really one for assemblage filmmaking, building a scene out of several shots, instead preferring to use fewer shots and cover everything in a master, often, but not always, moving. These moving shots of people or groups of people moving are kind of the iconic example people go for when they want to show what a Jodorowsky film is like. This isn't to say that he's not one for editing, because he is, but it's often used to create a vibe or make an abstract point or give a moment punch, rather than just covering a scene in the traditional shot, reverse shot format. Another thing that struck me about The Holy Mountain in that April 2024 rewatch was how damn funny the film is. We think of it as a huge, psychedelic, mind-bending experience, which it kind of is, but it's also a very broad satire with what I'm going to call some extremely full-on performances. It's kind of like the movie version of The Naked Lunch that we never got.
When we built this multifamily complex, we made a big mistake. We lost money. We gave them small gardens and windows. We installed water, lighting, and heating systems. This was a wrong concept. A man doesn't need a home. All he needs is a shelter. If we can sell him on the idea of a shelter, we can make millions.
Jodorowsky had worked for a long time in circuses, and The Holy Mountain and a lot of his films have a real sense of the carnival to them, as well as a homemade quality that you don't get very often. Everything that you see in a film is made by someone, and a lot of the things you see in The Holy Mountain were made by Jodorowsky himself. He wrote and directed the film, sure, but he also worked on the paintings and the sets and the costume and the music, and because you have this one person working on everything, it gives a real strong sense of identity to the film. This is Jodorowsky's film, in the same way that the films of Annabella are so very Annabella, because she did absolutely everything on those films. Wrote, directed, costume, makeup, sets, etc. When you watch an Annabella film, every frame is filled with her hard work and dedication, and you get that here too. Behind the scenes, Jodorowsky was also making this film in a way that people don't really make films anymore. It's shot in sequence, which is unusual, sure, but what's weirder is the literalness of everything in the film. For example, one of the characters is a millionaire, so Jodorowsky cast a millionaire in this role, and this is the millionaire's house. Makes sense, I guess. And his casting choices and other choices throughout the film are very much in this literalness vein. Another example, the film is filled with symbols, and these symbols very much tell you Jodorowsky's background thoughts to the film, or how things are supposed to be interpreted or read. Look at this introduction of the thief. Look at the tarot card he has on him. There's no ambiguity here. Jodorowsky is telling you exactly what the meaning is here. You can look up the Fool and learn everything Jodorowsky wants you to know about this character. And this carries on throughout the film, with symbol after symbol after symbol being used to literally explain what this means, what that means, and how the film should all be read. Of course, in order to do this, you need to know the tarot and astrological symbols and a number of other sources to work out what the symbols mean. But then this whole film is something that Jodorowsky literally believed would make the world a better place. He's making this film as a panacea for humanity, something that will cure all of the world's problems. He genuinely thought this film would change the world, make it a better place, and encourage us to go on our own spiritual journeys to improve ourselves. Is that what I did with the film on that rewatching in April 2024? No, not really. But then I don't really subscribe to some of the same philosophies that Jodorowsky does. Remember in Meshes of the Afternoon how Deren was firmly against interpretation, because she believed that if you see an object as a symbol, then you start thinking about something else, and she wanted audiences to watch the film, consider the film, think about the film, and nothing else. I guess I'm a bit more in the Deren Deren camp than the Jodorowsky camp in that regard. For me, it doesn't matter whether the central character is represented by the tarot card, the Fool, or by another belief system or symbol. What matters is that this is someone who's a bit out of control, someone who has no respect for themselves or others or the world around them, someone who is living for the party, flying too close to the sun. We all know this person. They can never get enough, can they? But they learn, like the Tibetans, to survive on a little. Before I went to Nepal in 2019, I had what I'm going to call a real bad time in 2018. And a little piece of me died and never really grew back. And then the Nepal thing happened, and people would say to me, what are you doing to prepare? And truth be told, I didn't see any way that I possibly could prepare. I just continued getting up, putting my shoes on, and doing everything I had to do. And then suddenly, I was doing these things in Nepal, in Kathmandu, in Elam, in Bharatpur, flying alongside the Himalayas. Imagine how long it would take to walk to the horizon here. Imagine how quiet it would be. Because of the elevation, moving 100 feet forward in any direction takes an enormous amount of time, because most of the time you're mainly going up or down, but forward is hard to do. My involvement in Nepal expanded into involvement with Egypt, Rwanda, Sri Lanka, and Pakistan, and for a while there I was running the biggest youth outreach filmmaking project in the world, giving thousands of young people a platform for their voices to be heard. But you can never get enough, can you? And when other people stepped in to turn something big and beautiful into something small, I quietly dismantled everything, pushed it into a fire pit, and watched it burn. The day after I rewatched The Holy Mountain in April 2024, I got up, put my shoes on and travelled to the hospice. Whereas previously I'd found the journey frustrating or aggravating, this time I found it different. There was a serenity to it, and looking around I realised how very different all the other travellers around me were. Previously I'd let them merge into one anonymous mass, but now that I took the time to look, I saw how unique each person was. Arriving at the hospice, there was no one else there, and I took the time to read a section of a book by Ernaux to my grandfather, because one of the last conversations we had, before he could no longer have conversations, had been about Ernaux. Eventually other people arrived, and the day fell into the same pattern they usually did, watching a chest rise and fall, listening to breathing, and thinking of that koan. Grandfather dies, father dies, son dies. I often had to stand outside the hospice in the garden speaking on the telephone to various people, and it was cold that April. So I wrapped up warm, cocooned, and I took the time to notice the light falling on the buildings and the plant life around me, and the sound of my feet on the paving stones beneath. Now I can't say that this change of mind was definitely due to me rewatching The Holy Mountain the night before, because that would be too simple an answer, but something was definitely different. But then I wouldn't really want anyone to take definitive life lessons from this, because this is just a series of video and audio clips on a timeline assembled in a flat in London on a planet which is spinning through a galaxy which is one of many whirling through a universe at unimaginable speeds. And what really matters is what you do next.